Perfect timing, baby. React meta continues, but this time with grinding gear here. Why we aren't switching to WoW? Here's the channel right here. But I thought this might be interesting to watch. Plus, we have a little connection here to the grinding gear folks. We have our beloved Nawel. Yeah, how are you doing, Disaster? Our beloved Nawel is over here putting in the work for their clips channel here too. So I would highly recommend checking them out. I've seen a couple of their videos here and there. Like, you know, they've been slowly going through the story, and they're in Shadowbringers right now, but they looks like they're having a lot of fun. Here's the clips channel over here, grinding gear clips and highlights. Nawel is handling the editing here, so go check that out. But yeah, let's check this out, because you know there's a lot of people Final Fantasy, I mean, people are checking out the new World of Warcraft stuff anyway, but you know, a lot of creators are moving on, or not moving on over. Some creators have quit. Other creators are just testing out the waters with World of Warcraft and all that, seeing how it plays. So here we go.
What? Oh.
What?
Nice.
Nice.
It's good to be back.
In life or in Azeroth?
This looks oh, some Dragonflight. And I know we have some folks around here who have
Where do we stand? We're
delved in and out of
looking
WoW.
at this from the longest breaks we have both individually ever taken from the game that shall not be named, World of Warcraft.
Then you name it.
It's the Voldemort of MMOs at this point. For me, it really just comes down to Shadowlands was a massive disappointment. So over a year ago now, I unsubbed and I started playing Final Fantasy XIV. I've never taken a break this long.
So go, you know, I get all my WoW news from all of you, people who have, you know, been in and out of that community. But yeah, along with all the Blizzard scandals of recent, it just seems like the quality of World of Warcraft isn't what it used to be. Maybe from a systems perspective and even story. I know people are like, I mean, it's not like a story heavy game, but there's an overarching story, and I heard a lot of people were not happy with how the whole jailer arc ended up ending, right? And did that end in Shadowlands then? Is that what happened?
Before, I've taken breaks before, but not like this. And Kyle, you haven't played since what? Early BFA?
2019 BFA spring would have been the last time I touched the game. I quit because of the story. Made no sense.
Okay, the story.
Azerite armor, war fronts, island expeditions, just pure, absolute burnout. I didn't even touch Shadowlands. This is well before any news came out about Blizzard.
You know, interestingly enough, because, you know, talking about burnout, right? I remember when the variant dungeons for Final Fantasy XIV came out, there was some discussion, right? People were talking about like, oh, like the rewards aren't like great enough. Like, you know, I'd want the, you know, they should increase the rewards. So this makes like a you know, another system to like grind through, or to constantly kind of grind through. And then the whole topic of like, you know, is there enough content in Final Fantasy XIV? Versus is there, you know, too little? Because, you know, the whole, you know, Yoshi P is like, yeah, you know, y'all should take breaks and everything. I feel like, in, you know, just thinking about this, right, it sounded like he was describing some systems in WoW, like the island and whatever, and Warfront, I forget the names. But sometimes that happens, right, when there's too much to do, and it feels like it ends up feeling like a chore sometimes, right? Have you all ever felt that before?
Just the game was bad, and it was riddled with systems. And the Azerite Earthblood story thing, and Sylvanas stealing a dead body from Jaina's brother or cousin or something, it made no sense. It wasn't going anywhere.
That part was cool. I like that part.
It's a badass idea, but you had to sit on it. And this isn't like sitting on Game of Thrones for a week, or maybe, heaven forbid, there's a holiday and Game of Thrones takes 2 weeks. This was months of waiting with a brother body in a cask. And it didn't go anywhere. None of it mattered. It sucked.
We're making this video because we're not quitting Final Fantasy XIV to go play.
We got them. They're here. There's just enough content in 14. They need to step it up. There's just enough, but they need to step it up. I've only played 6,000 hours and I've run out of things to do. Square Enix really dropping the ball. Weren't people complaining about I mean, in hindsight, to me, I feel something like Island Sanctuary. I mean, look, it was the first. It was on release, right? You know, a new system in the game. In hindsight, it felt like there wasn't as much to do, but it was. I also realize it's, you know, something that they're going to be working on in the future. But we're, you know, people were hammering out Island Sanctuary in like the first like 1 or 2 days, like min-maxing it, and then they're finished with it, and they're like, oh, I got nothing else to do now, right? I feel like that happens a lot. Some people complain about like there not being enough content. And then when there's a lot of content, on the other hand, there's too much to do. It feels like a chore to keep up with everything, right? I've felt like that. I felt that before in certain games. A lot of times with mobile games, because every now and then I'll delve into a mobile game just to pass the time. But I mean, mobile games are kind of designed like that with paywalls and stuff. But it feels like there's so much to do, and it feels like a chore doing things like dailies and weeklies, even in MMOs, right? I feel like this is only an issue for very long time players, since I have a lot to catch up on. Eureka is a big one. Yeah, I always said I've only been playing for a year and whatever, 6 months, 5 months, 4 months. I still have a lot to do. Yeah, that's your point. Most of the people mad about content have played a lot. I mean, even Ko's video, right? I mean, he said but he has a healthier mindset, right? He's like, I'm taking a break from Final Fantasy 14. I've been playing this for 2 years, and he had an ungodly amount of hours played. I did some of the mental math, like I forget the exact number, but he was basically like over 2 years, he was averaging like 8 hours a day or something like that. And that's a lot. That's like a full-time job. I think the math kind of worked out like that. But I mean, you know, burnout does happen.
World of Warcraft, but we are both interested. For me, I still love the Warcraft universe. It is still among my favorite fictions out there. Kyle, you seem more curious from an investigative standpoint, but I don't want to put words in your mouth.
Oh, that's the truth of it. I've been on these videos comparing World of Warcraft and Final Fantasy, and frankly, my comparisons are extremely old.
By the way, I haven't kept up with the World of Warcraft story since, you know, 2010-ish, whatever. But I was so in love with the World of Warcraft galaxy, universe, ever since I was a little kid. I played Warcraft 1, I played Warcraft 2, I played Warcraft 3, then I head into World of Warcraft, and that was like my life. I loved it. I still love it. I mean, I love thinking back on it, but I'm just, you know, I'm not as caught up with the story these days. But it's a fantasy world that, you know, I have a lot of good memories for. So
old, almost 4 years old. Very outdated information, as many people have informed me about when I talk about particularly healing in World of Warcraft. Now, I played a Disc Priest at that time, but still, I've been wrong about a lot of things. There's a lot going on with Dragonflight. There's a lot of promises being made, such as Third Era, saying this is a completely new vision for World of Warcraft.
Which is highly specific. That is from a really well done video that Preach just put out. It is not part of WoW's marketing push, unless you look at that Preach video as part of WoW's marketing push, which I think you could, but it's also distinctly not the script fest that like the Dragonflight reveal was.
No, and you can go watch our review of that particular announcement. That was bad. That was just bad. But they're focusing more on evergreen content. Coming from Final Fantasy now, evergreen content is amazing. We have loved our blind minimum eye level extremes.
Funny enough,
going through
people talk, they throw out this word evergreen. I didn't realize just like how much this word was used. I've even in my own line of work, you know, not in game development or anything, we always talk about having evergreen content. Just connecting the dots there. I heard that you need to buy the books to learn more about the story for World of Warcraft. Isn't there a lot of books too? I could see that. I could see that being a thing. I'm sure there's a lot of like canon and non-canon, because Warcraft has been out for so long. I feel like there's so many stories to go along with it too, huh?
Through the MSQ and playing it like it's brand new. What is evergreen content for World of Warcraft? It's certainly not their story. That thing's a mess. This is time walking, chromey.
You're not even talking about the quality of the story. You're just talking about how it doesn't link together in game anymore.
How it's laid out. If
you time walk and you hit max level, it's just like, that's it. Party's over. We're porting you away from what you're doing.
I've got my Drakthir ready for Dragonflight expansion day 1 and some Death Knights.
You can watch dozens of hours of YouTube videos instead. I remember even when I wasn't playing, who's that? Nobble, right? Isn't he one of the lore guys for WoW? There was a time even when I wasn't playing WoW, and I came across his channel. I was like, oh, this is like, I love just listening to it when I was falling asleep in bed or something. Like I said, in love with the universe. But I guess it sounds like people are relying on these external sources for the lore and the story, and it's not being provided to them in the game. I also paused here because getting a look at the actual models here. Looks like we got some. What are they called? Are they Dragonborn? They're some, dragon people. There it is. Boom.
He's yelling at me to go to Shadowlands. Like it's
something. Sir, that is Bolvar. That is not some death knight.
Convoluted.
That is
mess.
the Lich King.
No, it was the dude with just the helmet. It was just the helmet dude. The Ebon. Oh,
just helmet. Oh, okay. Never mind. Yeah. I'm sorry. It was very. I'm sorry. I was wrong. Point is, things are different for us now. This is not our garden variety World of Warcraft break. You've been on breaks. I've been on breaks. We're both coming off of the longest breaks we've ever had. We've both spent our time away from Azeroth with the first MMO to get its hooks into us the way WoW did. I am mad impressed with Final Fantasy XIV. I started getting really invested in its story and its characters at a time where I felt that World of Warcraft story was reaching an all-time low, and also like massively dropping the ball with one of my favorite characters ever. They didn't stick the landing for me. I think it was
just bringing something up too. Do you think part of the reason? I mean, look, they very well could. It seems like they do very much enjoy Final Fantasy XIV. Did they find more success after switching to Final Fantasy XIV too? Because I mean, that's always one optic that we never talk about. But I mean, regardless, right? If they enjoy the game, they enjoy the game. But that's always something to think about there too.
I think everything they did with Sylvanas was terrible. I'm simultaneously
this scene
stoked to see Final Fantasy XIV's current endgame, but also a little sad that the end of the MSQ is starting to come into sight.
I felt the same way.
Final Fantasy is now like a part of my personality the way WoW is, and I haven't had that before. But before we move on, we know you're subbed to this channel, because no one would ever watch a video on YouTube without being subbed. That's just that's insane.
That's villainy.
You would never do that. You're clearly subbed.
More success is relative.
We have two
they found success with 14 though.
And a podcast. Go check out our Clips channel.
Clips channel. By the way, this is Novel channel here. Novel channel, baby. Y'all go check that out. Like they both done Warcraft podcasts before, right? Because I was gonna bring that up because I've been delving into just some videos on my off time, and people were talking about who was that guy, Ginger Prime? Because he's one of the guys who quit recently, right? And one of the videos I watched, I mean, the guy, for all the excuses that he brought up, the guy, it also seems like that guy just like wasn't finding success with 14 content. So like, it's not a surprise that they might want to leave. And on the opposite side of things, like, we found a lot of success with 14 content. Plus, we like the game. It's a match made in heaven, right? Why leave? Let's stay, right? Ginger Prime is just a piece of shit way before he quit 14. Yeah, I don't know anything about him, but I know he was catching a lot of flack when that video came out. But yeah, I read in some comments and everything. I don't know. Seems like there was him in the community didn't really see eye to eye on many things, right?
Over at Grinding Gear Clips, we also have a stream VOD
Sup for Novel.
And Kyle, you and I are seasoned podcast veterans at this point.
It's true.
That podcast can be found wherever it is you get your podcast. We record it live right here on this channel.
Oh, it's on Spotify. You can find
the VODs over on our VOD channel.
I have Spotify.
And the podcast is available
I'm a Spotify guy.
All podcatchers. And
did y'all get your rewind?
Check out our Patreon by visiting supportourbromance.com. Thanks for supporting us in the Grinding Gear cinematic universe. This isn't a review of Dragonflight. The launch was a mess, and neither of us have even had a chance to get our dragons yet. I tried this morning, dude, and they shut the server off on me.
Oh, wow. I got to play a little last night.
Ginger Farm drama.
The Zeppelin appeared. The Zeppelin worked. I arrived on the coast, and there was the visage, not the spell the visage, but the view of the isle shrouded in mist.
That is one thing I missed. Back in, I mean, looking in hindsight, maybe I can reflect on it in a very positive light. I'm sure, these days, right, quality of life, people might get annoyed, but the way world travel in World of Warcraft back in vanilla, it was hop on a Zeppelin, hop on a boat, have a mage teleport you, have a warlock summon you. There wasn't always like, we didn't have an aetheryte for every There was a little, it was like a social interaction every time we hopped on the Zeppelin, and like, oh, who else is on the Zeppelin, or hopping on with your friends, like, all right, now we're on the Zeppelin, like we're just chilling out for like 5 minutes waiting for it, or waiting till we get to our destination. It was like a little social event every single time. He's still farming drama even after quitting. Real blog post about ex-girlfriend vibe on that too. Yeah, I'm not too familiar with this stuff, but moving on, I guess, right? I'm still trying to learn more about the community, so I don't know what other creators have like quit. And the creators that I follow, none of them have quit, but they're, you know, a lot of them are checking out World of Warcraft right now, and so on. But yeah, Zeppelin,
And it was
travel, all that. Boom.
pretty, and the sky was arted.
It was ashy.
Okay, this is a bias thing, but because, you know, we're all Final Fantasy 14 players here. But like, what do you think about like the aesthetics of WoW versus like Final Fantasy? We kind of talked about this the other day, because I was mentioning how, you know, some people who tried Final Fantasy 14 who came from WoW, they couldn't vibe with 14's this overall aesthetic and everything coming from WoW. But I actually really like 14's aesthetic.
There was ash in the air. There was this trail of fire. It looks good. I really like how well it looks. I like how it looks. But the point of this is to talk about what it's like dusting off World of Warcraft after feeling like we've been fully absorbed into Final Fantasy 14 for over a year now. You hit me up during your break and you were like, "Hey, I want to dip my toe in the Dragonflight because it appears I'm coming back on Dragonflight release day." I was like, "Ooh, okay. I got to prepare. I got to go into World of Warcraft like a classic car that's just been rotting away.
Too cartoony.
In a barn. I got to open up my World of Warcraft garage and take the tarp off."
Yeah, it has its own little vibe, huh?
Characters, because I wasn't sure what I wanted to start with.
It's got its own little vibe.
Not mattering,
but I feel like
to play Dragonflight.
Like back when this came out, though, like especially when it came out, like I guess I don't know. Maybe it could look potentially a little outdated looking back. I feel like it looks fine to me. For me, I have no problems. I like the vibe. But like when it first came out, I'm thinking about when it first came out also, I was like, holy shit, this looks great. I always liked Diablo, StarCraft more. See, I always liked Warcraft more. I now understand the term toon, what the term toon meant now. Yeah, I mean, it does have a more, like Final Fantasy 14 has a more realistic aesthetic to it, right? Just to me. I don't know how else to describe it. I'm not the best when it comes to describing these things.
But I did return to World of Warcraft post Dragonflight patch, which means, and you have too, which means we've seen all of the other new things. My first surprise, dude, was seeing that new UI. Because I was just sitting alone in my room. WoW was updated. And I was
they wouldn't look good in bikinis, huh?
I was being lazy. I didn't go update my add-ons, so I just turned them all off. And I get in.
So it sounds like this is a new UI interface they have here. I mean, akin to what Final Fantasy. I'm looking at the grid and everything. But yeah, back when I played, we only had like, you know, the hotbars at the bottom. We had some running up the top and everything. I'm sure there's like add-ons that people use to adjust that. That was also another point of this, like, you know, discussion between Final Fantasy 14 versus World of Warcraft, right? It's, you know, add-ons versus, you know, it seems like everyone who plays WoW needs to have like all these add-ons, whereas people who play 14, not necessarily, like they push it, like, you know, the developers are like, no, don't use add-ons. Like, you don't, yeah. The disastrous here for the bikinis, baby. Have you seen the videos of people who made WoW in UE4? I have not seen that.
Oh, hey, I know this from Final Fantasy.
Yeah.
It's a very Final Fantasy look of things. Even has the grid if you want to turn it on. That's nice.
I appreciate the grid.
Kind of like quality of life stuff that hopefully they focus on when they're not making this modular expansion only content.
I love the new UI. I think it's fantastic. And
do other MMOs implement the grid
two
too?
Types of people in the world. The type of people that get angry when games just take things from other games, and the kind of people that are like, oh, thank God you're taking what works from your competition. I'm in the latter camp.
Yeah, but I mean,
I'm very happy.
It has its unique charm, I feel like. I recognize this from 14, yeah. The grid. I mean, was the grid like, how many MMOs utilize the grid aside 14? I don't know. Is it just a product of time? Or was it just like 14 developers were on top of shit and were like, all right, we're going to do the grid when no one else was doing it? Right? Was that one of their main focuses when they were coming out of 1.0? They're like, okay, we're going to try to update like the interface and everything. Because HUD matters, the interface matters and all that. I bet anything will look really good in UE4 though, right? Aren't they on UE5 now? That's crazy.
Happy about this. I'm like, thank goodness that's how it should be. I love it in Final Fantasy for a reason, and I used to install add-ons in World of Warcraft that let me do that for a reason, and now I I don't need them.
If you like MMOs, you want an arms race here. You want both to be competing with each other. Now, each game is being made in the past. We're playing a two.
I've been saying this, even though I don't play WoW, and I know a lot of people are frustrated with it, but I hope the new expansion turns out well, right? Because that's just good for MMOs in general, right? I don't remember some of the past MMOs I played where the UI/HUD was that customizable. Okay. Maybe they were just ahead of the times then.
2-year-old game with Dragonflight, and when the next Final Fantasy expansion comes out, that would have been made after Endwalker. So the arms race is going to be messy. This isn't a, Shark Tale and Finding Nemo situation. This is happenstance. But hopefully they continue to steal from each other and we get altogether better game.
And then there's Drakthir.
Back in Stormblood, you had it. Nice.
Which, when they showed off Drakthir, when they showed off this new race and class, they're both.
So here's one thing: Blizzard always had awesome cinematics, right? But we're talking about the actual like aesthetics and everything. It's the contrast between this,
when they showed off this,
which looks super cool, and then boom, like super cartoony and everything. And that was pretty funny. But no, Blizzard cinematics were so good. I love the Blizzard cinematics.
And class. They're just locked. If you want to be an evoker, you gotta play a Drakthir. If you want to be a Drakthir, you have to play an evoker. That's
okay. Well, I don't know. These dragons are like, I don't know. They don't look like, They don't look like fierce dragons or anything. They just kind of look like goofy I don't know. You get what I'm saying? I don't know. So
that's it. That's your only option. I talked some good smack, dude. I took one look at those wimpy noodle-looking dragons with their rounded off bat wings, and I just started ripping into them. Like, these are the lamest looking dragon people I've ever seen. Why do they got human eyes? What type of furry fantasy is going?
How did 14? So I thought about this. How did 14 end up with the furry game memes? I thought about, like, if you're coming from WoW where you have night elves and you're coming from a fantasy world, you have like gnolls and all these other things. Why are cat people so like, whoa? I've seen that before. People are like, I could not get over the cat girls. Like, the cat girls was too much for me. And I'm like, but you're living in a fantasy realm. You should be like used to just seeing like shit like that, right? It's all around, right? To be fair, the main FF dragon is kind of goofy too. Who's the main FF dragon? The main FF dragon.
Going on here, which I realize they already have. Yeah,
Wow, Tauren
people.
They're scaling.
Yes. I want Garg.
Warcraft 3 had pandas. I mean, you have panda people and Draenei looking people, whatever the hell they are. You think the Vidofnir model is goofy? It does have a distinct aesthetic compared to the other ones. I always like Vidofnir's model. It's because Final Fantasy characters are hot and WoW characters look like Saturday morning cartoon characters. Well, that's the thing, because WoW characters, or 14 characters, they look more realistic, and they're like very humanoid, even with the other features.
Skinny wing capes. You put them around your collar and you lock them, and they float down
Vidofnir has the beer belly.
You're not using them. When they're out, make them more like concave rather than convex. I'm not doing another. I'm not opening Photoshop. I'm not doing an art lecture here. It's not happening. Not this time. That would be its own video.
But you have preferences, clearly.
Yes,
they're more lizard folk than dragons.
Yes, and then
right, when I was looking at the WoW models, I was thinking about the Ra. Yeah, I think the Ra look cool. Plus, they all look very humanoid. Even like bunny girls, cat girls, they all look very humanoid, except the Hrothgar, right? They're actually full on like furry. Maybe that's what it is. I agree with the Disaster there.
Couple things happened. One, we got the animatics. I forget what they're called for this one, and I haven't watched them all because I'm not that interested in Dragonflight's story. But I watched the first one just to see what was going on. And Nosdormu shows up, and he's talking to a Drakthir, and they're hanging out, being buddy. Pretty sure Nosdormu's evil already, by the way. I think that's going to be the twist of this expansion. The art of the Drakthir in that, the way they paint the Drakthir, it's kind of how I want them to look. A little more monstrous.
See, this looks pretty cool.
Lizardy. Like you came across a velociraptor in the Jurassic Park jungle and you're a little scared. That's what I wanted. That happened, and it kind of like injected that seed into my brain that I can then, my imagination can take over when I go and play the game. The other thing that happened was I just had a quiet afternoon during the Thanksgiving break. I was just kind of like, what should I do with my time? I went and fired up a Drakthir. I got to eat my hat. They're cool.
Nah, but you don't have to eat the whole hat.
I'm not going to eat the wing hat. They still have lame ass wings when they're running around. Like, it already looks like a cosplayer built those wings. I'm eating almost the whole hat. I think they're pretty rad.
I think it's more like a
How do y'all feel
RPG
about
situation.
because I think how it works for the Draknir, right? They have specific classes associated. How do you feel about specific classes or jobs being associated to certain races? Like they had that with in WoW, right? Vanilla. I don't know how much that's changed. But yeah, certain races could only play certain jobs or classes, and certain factions at one point in time had access to certain jobs as well that the other faction wouldn't have. I thought it was actually kind of neat, especially in the moment. Looking back on it now, would I want that restrict? Like if Final Fantasy 14 had that restriction, how would I feel about that? I'm not quite sure because when I went through it, I actually enjoyed it because it brought like a little uniqueness to one's character. But I can see how just as a quality of life thing, it's pretty restricting, right? Well, they also had the talent trees in Warcraft too. I actually like having the talent trees too. I don't know if that's what you're talking about. Because again, it's further customization for your character, even though what ends up happening is there's a meta, right? So really, even though you have access to kind of further specialize, you're following someone else's playbook for the best PvE build or the best PvP build, etc. Right? So there's some uniqueness, but you're still status quo when it comes to that uniqueness. You think that you like the idea of certain races being better at certain things? I kind of like that too. I actually kind of like that. That's one thing I kind of missed.
Where from the outside, BioWare games, RPGs,
But it's not like that's built into the lore of Final Fantasy 14 because we've seen races and NPCs of all shapes and sizes acting as certain jobs throughout in the world, right?
Your custom character, they're gonna look bad, but you get in there and you start finding the options that you personally like. And you elevate that bad somewhat to your own personal preference. And there's just a surprising amount of customization. Plus the visage.
Now that you're bringing that up, during character creation, I did see that there was a thing about, if you play this race, you get like a little extra bit of intelligence or whatever, right? And me coming from WoW, the min-maxing side, I'm like, oh, let me look this up. Is there a certain job I should be if I want to be a thaumaturge? But people are like, nah, it's minuscule, it doesn't matter. One thing WoW also had was race-based talents, like the Tauren. If you were a Tauren, you had like the Stomp, right? I thought that was kind of cool too. But again, I'm sure it brings up people might complain about certain things, or they had certain resistances and all that. We have Lalafell Marauder, who is also intellectual. Yeah. I always like the idea of like a little gnome or a Lalafell warrior tank of some sort. I always appreciate those.
The human form you have.
16 minutes
You're
left, y'all.
Bethesda games for me. I'm like, my character's going to look busted no matter what.
I think custom male shepherd never looked good, no matter how hard you tried.
I did play the default male shepherd.
Yeah, you did. All right, that's what you did.
Yeah, people will complain then.
That's a good point.
But you
people
were able
did complain.
To find the options that
Tsurubachi.
work for you and walk away being like, oh, well, all right, that's kind of cool looking. For me, the big like, this isn't Final Fantasy moment anymore for me was I was killing things in the first 2 minutes. And
Femshep. I never played the Femshep.
Hopefully it's under attack.
But I heard the VA was and everything was so badass.
I went in
Mass Effect,
reading
right?
all the text. Like I even made a Draknir because I was watching.
Okay, so just talking about another difference between World of Warcraft and Final Fantasy 14. When I played World of Warcraft, I never read the quest text. I just accepted it. All right, go kill this, do that, blah blah blah. Right. That's one of the differences, because in 14, I mean, you can totally skip through it, but it's kind of fed to you, like voice acting and all that. Like here's the quest, like here's the story surrounding the quest, or why we're doing this thing. Well, because WoW there was no MSQ, there was no main like story quest to like follow perpetually. You were just doing all the whatever quests you could pick up. Here there's an MSQ to guide you. I suppose that's one of the main contributing factors. Anyway, let's go.
Promotional videos, Alex Straza standing up on the rock talking about something, the evasion, the danger of the head, and Khadgar's there. I didn't care about the plight of thousands of year old dragons. I don't care about Khadgar telling the mortal races to unite once again, I figured playing a Drakthir would actually insert me into the story that they're working on. And it did. It kind of introduced me to a dragony world, and I killed a lot of things. And I read every bit of text. Like, I was reading it like it was MSQ. And that definitely.
Oh, they have a campaign now.
Because it didn't really matter.
Oh no, yeah, no.
Is that this marker?
I definitely skimmed. It's. I've never been that way about World of Warcraft, and in
Same.
more recent expansions, if it's particularly important, they're gonna have the dialogue box that pops up, and you're gonna have the talking head, and it'll be voice acted.
There's times where it breaks through, like Dragonflight, Wrath of the Lich King, like certain Legion quests. We're hanging out with Pooh Bear. Like there are times when the quests you go, oh my god, this is good. I need to read all this. I'm gonna absorb this whole zone, but it's rare.
I think
Most people just run. So that's the thing, right? World of Warcraft, it has the stereotype, which I think is actually true because I went through it too. People say the real game begins at endgame when you get into the raids and everything. Once you get max level, contrast to Final Fantasy XIV, where 90% of it is the main story as you're leveling, right? It's the story-based RPG MMO.
it's a healthy way to go about it. You know, don't force yourself. I experienced that in Final Fantasy XIV quite recently in Shadowbringers. There's some of those zones are fetch questy, and if I wasn't streaming it, I would skim. I would skim and move on until I feel the weight of the story crushing down upon.
I kind of understand where he's coming from. Has an endgame in WoW just been people complaining, quitting for like 3 expansions? That's what it sounds like. I mean, it sounds like people haven't been happy. But I understand where he's coming from. I never actually like skipped through it. I always read everything. But yeah, there have been times during the story where it felt like a lull, right? Like, you know, we have these like, but I think that's what makes the epic moments in Final Fantasy XIV so sweet, right? We have these big epic cutscenes, these plot points that they're hitting on, because we're not getting those like right after, you know, one after the other. We're getting, you know, hey, go talk to Y'shtola about this thing. Go talk to this, you know, this beast tribe about something. Okay, we're chilling. We're learning some things. A little bit of slice of life here and there. Boom, like the dungeon. Big story moment. All right, now we're chilling again. Let's regroup. Let's talk. People are off doing their things. The trolley arc. You know, life is like a trolley, right? You know, no matter how fast or slow it goes, we're gonna get to our destination, unless we don't have a Talos. We gotta go get a Talos. But there were some good moments in the trolley arc. In hindsight, when I was editing the videos, I was like, man, like these are some like it's a nice little plot line. But yes, like the trolley arc, like this guy, they just specifically showed it right here.
And if I wasn't streaming it, I would skip.
When I was editing the video for this, I did not include a lot of this because when I was going through the footage, I was like, man, nothing really happened here. I mean, yeah, we get some lore about the noob Mo and everything, but it's not very like, you know.
I would skim and move on until
the trolley
I feel
goes.
the weight of the story crushing down upon my shoulders again.
The other part that I thought was kind of shocking was I spent 3 years listening to World of Warcraft people complain about how Final Fantasy cutscenes and mini cinematics inside the game are very emote heavy and stiff. Come on. This is the modern version of the game, and the flapping of these draconic lips is the best we can do. Both are jank. Both have their jank moments.
100%. I think there's just more of it in Final Fantasy, especially in early Realm Reborn. There's a lot of those where you're just kind of watching people move their arms around.
There's a lot of static scenes in Final Fantasy 14 for sure.
Also, in Final Fantasy's defense, a lot more like great, more involved in-game cinematics.
Yeah.
World of Warcraft, it's still pretty
lot.
rare. When they do them, they're great. Those in-game cinematics going all the way back to Wrathgate, that team, whoever's still around, a lot of people have come and gone. I think of Taron Gregory, who's he's the guy out there doing the press junket usually. I love those in-game cinematics, and I think they
You don't like that animation here?
Freaking fantastic.
I don't like the film grain they do. I wish they kept it more in-engine looking.
Like, I don't have a problem with this animation.
Appear in those, which is a disappointment.
That's how.
Or
it
the one
works,
prior. I didn't really have a problem with that either.
Right, you are not the main character.
It is
you don't get
pre-rendered.
the killing blow. I do think I'm going to be a better MMO player, though, having played multiple MMOs, because I immediately started setting up my bars like they are in Final Fantasy, particularly using shift commands for my AoE attacks.
Oh, aren't they great? Aren't they?
I do that too.
Yeah, I really, really like that. I never did that before.
I do that too.
I got really into talent points. I'm a big fan of deck builders. I
like the talent system.
Decking is a sin, and you skip half the game.
Again, I like the talent system because it feels like it's unique. But in an MMO like this, what ends up happening is like there's usually a meta, so everyone they spec into the same thing, right? For the most part, in a general sense. That's the double-edged, sword of it.
That way, yeah. Maybe you want to play tonight. I don't have to play tonight. I just want to make decks. And so I really, really like the talent point system being back. And I was surprised that there were points for both trees. Like I really got invested in there. I was really crunching on my target dummy, really exploring that stuff.
I'm the complete opposite. I have no interest in trial and erroring my talents, and I can't stand deck builders outside of like limited magic, which it's just part of the format.
That's the thing too, right? Because when you get into the min-maxing part of it, like I remember in World of Warcraft, like during raids or something, there's a high chance that a priest who's not spec'd the right way to heal might get left out of a raid. They just fill it in with someone with the right spec or something like that, right? So it comes with its downsides, I would say.
But yeah, that's never been a thing for me, and I love that I can just import talent builds now.
It is not, yeah, importing is an important feature.
Yeah, it's something I use all the time in Hearthstone, and here it is in World of Warcraft. Works for me. Big fan.
Did y'all ever play Hearthstone?
Too is like,
I played it when it came out.
Helped.
There's
no talents to worry about. A job is a job is a job. My Dragoon is like your Dragoon. My Dark Knight is like your Dark Knight. Your Astrologian isn't like my Astrologian because that job scares me.
Heart of the cards, baby.
Oh man, Final Fantasy should steal the import UI. If you could copy a code and just put that in rather than doing that like upload save thing, and then you could be like, hey, here's my UI and share it around. That'd be a good advancement. I do not miss talent points in Final Fantasy at all because I have access to every job. And so when I want to explore and feel different, creative, do a dungeon in a different way, I just completely change my job class.
That's one of the things I've been liking about Final Fantasy, or that I love about it too, right? Because in WoW you had to make an alt if I wanted to play a different job or class, as they call it. Here, same character, like account-wide sharing type of stuff.
And good. That's the interesting thing I've done for the evening. That's more than enough. Last thing I want is talent points on top of having all those jobs available to me.
I'm totally fine never having talent points in Final Fantasy XIV, and I'm totally fine not worrying about them in World of Warcraft. But hey, I'm glad they're there for you to tinker with. I'll just stand in the corner going, well, he could be playing right now.
I'm a dungeon master. I plan for 12 hours and then I play for 3. It's what I do, and I love it.
That's like modding Skyrim.
But in that way,
mod for weeks, play for a day,
difference
time to remod.
Between Final Fantasy and World of Warcraft came to light. World of Warcraft, to me, is an action MMORPG. And Final Fantasy is an MMORPG, perhaps drama. There's still action. It's just, for the most part, a lot of it is optional. You're going to have a trial here and there, but you don't have to pursue blind minimum eye level, Thordan
there's
or
a
anything
lot
like that.
There's a lot more RPG in Final Fantasy XIV versus WoW.
And you're invested in your character in that way. Like, your Warrior of Light is your character. Whereas World of Warcraft, I needed to be a Drakthir to even care about the story going on. And the next expansion or another storyline, I would make something completely different. I'm not a main anymore. I play this like Diablo, where based on what I'm seeing, I will be a certain class and character.
Throughout all of WoW, I've ebbed and flowed between caring about the story and not giving a rat's ass, because that
was one of the main differences between the two, right? Because in 14 we are the main character. WoW, you're part of you're a cog in the machine, right? I don't know how it's changed then, but I see the benefits to both sides, in my opinion. Being the main character versus just being part of the machine.
I just want to play the game. I'm just there for the gameplay. Obviously, the most I've ever cared is Wrath of the Lich King, and then kind of ebbed and flowed through there. Cataclysm, I didn't give a damn. Warlords of Draenor, literally the least I've ever cared about.
Yeah, main character,
story.
Baby.
And then Legion was awesome, and I was super invested again. And I was like, "Ooh, where are we going with this? Where are we taking Sylvanas?" And then it fell off a cliff. in Final Fantasy 14, I haven't stopped being invested. There's little moments, like I mentioned Fetch Quest, where I'm just like, I don't need to know about the capybara people that live in the cave, but it's fine. But as soon as
The
if you're
Nubo,
not into that,
baby.
it doesn't matter. You're going to be back to like the main arc very shortly after that. You're going to be reinvested. At least that's been my experience with it. And so it's like, thank you, Dexter. Whatever the case, whether I was in the WoW or not in the WoW, that ebb and flow,
Dexter.
Final Fantasy 14 has really stood out for me because I haven't stopped being invested since I started carrying, which for me was probably the end. It was probably Raubon losing his cutting.
Good place to get invested.
Yeah, that's the point where I was like, oh shit.
Telegy, baby. That's
For
Bug
me, it was
Face.
Keeper of the Lake, but still, that's a lot of hours. That's deep in.
Yo, this was
But
good.
to me, it's worth it. It's worth it. I know there's a trend going around right now of, just skip straight to Heaven's Ward.
And so they came.
And I'm like, no, you can't. I'm that person now. You can't do it. You got to play it all. Because there's so much, especially some of the larger character moments in Heaven's Ward, they are set up in a realm.
A Realm Reborn ending took me by surprise. Because it felt like low stakes for the most part up to the story, and then everything kind of happened at the end of A Realm Reborn. I was like, oh shit, things are getting real. After the end of A Realm Reborn, I didn't trust anybody. At the end of A Realm Reborn, where we went to when we went to go meet Orshafa, I was like, this guy's too nice to us. He's a villain of some sort. I didn't trust anyone.
Realm Reborn, and I'm that person. I'm like, no, it's not going to hit as hard. You need to go through a Realm Reborn. So my point is,
you don't have to play Shadowlands in order to play Dragonflight, is your point. Like, literally, that you can completely ignore any story and go straight to Dragonflight. If that's
Another
what you care about.
2.55
I'm
patch
okay
series.
with that, and it
What does that
it's
mean?
in line with your. I don't think of WoW as an action RPG. I do think there's been a leak of Diablo into my World of Warcraft for quite some time now, but I still look at it primarily as an MMO. To me, there's still a lot of similarities between Final Fantasy and World of Warcraft. To me, like, tab targeting is just comfort. And if you're tab targeting, I'd look at your two games the same way. You can have deviations here and there, but they are primarily played the same way. But where I really agree with you is like, yeah, I don't give a shit about Diablo's story. I'm there for the gameplay. It rules. And that's right now how I'm feeling about World of Warcraft. I'm still not bought in. Like, whatever. Like, I could see myself caring about whatever story they have to show me in Dragonflight.
You think these 6.0 patches are going to end like AR ended? Big defeat vibe. I will say, by the way, Miguel's here. I just realized we're talking about ARR spoilers. I will say the stakes felt very high at the end of A Realm Reborn. But then as we progress through the story, the stakes as far as characters, deaths, and whatnot, there came a certain point where I stopped, even though I would speculate on it. I didn't feel like a lot of people's lives were in so much danger. After, certain story developments in like Anonymous, I felt like some of those high stakes were kind of removed. But yeah, if they, because we're heading into a fresh story in 14, or a continuation of the overarching story, but a fresh adventure, right? So if we were to have some sort of big defeat or ending like that, I feel like that'd be, suitable.
But I'd need to see it first.
And in the advertising campaign stuff they're doing, the original cinematic with Stone Boy, no idea what's going on. They put out another cinematic with like dragon riding, and you see this big storm beast, and you go, what's that?
That looks
By
cool.
playing the Drakthir story, I actually know what's going on. We're going to be fighting a bunch of large elemental-based primordial dragon types. The
Proto-Drakes.
Praetorians. Proto-Drakes. The Proto-Drakes. Like a bunch of ancient Proto-Drakes. And this is the lesser of them all. They keep saying of the storm, stop it. Here's the storm. Rest in peace. I love you. So now
Heroes of the
bosses are
Storm is so
lined up.
good. My friends and I used to play that all the time.
Dragons. Have I seen this
They
before?
killed it.
100 times. I've done it I did it in my own D&D campaign when I was 13. It is basic boss design. So there's so much that is unknown. We don't know what their evergreen content is. We don't know what an expansion for World of Warcraft looks like nowadays without borrowed power, but it's not going to dominate my time like my Warrior Flight does. It's an action game on the side. Another co-op game like Valheim is.
So what would get
We gotta
you
play that.
to play
Valheim.
WoW
We all
on
gotta
the
play
regular
together.
again, Kyle?
A focus on dungeons as the primary way to get gear outside of raiding. And for that, I would love to see the whole roulette system just placed in World of Warcraft. Just let me press a button. You have hundreds of dungeons, surely, at this point. Maybe not that many, but all the expansions together, there's a lot of dungeons.
Yeah,
And you've got-
I really like the roulette system. Do other MMOs have the whole system where one can go back and, you know, play the old raids or whatever, trial fights, boss fights, synced, like, you know, going back in time as if you were there in the moment? Do a lot of other MMOs have that? Or no? Because I think that's a really cool feature too. Everyone loves WoW expansions the first couple of months. All this gushing is meaningless until you see how people feel in a few months. That's true too, right? I mean, it happened, not even just expansions. MMO launches. Remember what was the Amazon one? Isn't that thing like dead? Or are they? I feel like they're kind of making a small comeback. But didn't that thing die after like the first like couple months or something? New World, yeah. Well, dude, New World was so hyped, right? It was so hyped, and people were playing it. And then I feel like it became a ghost town after, based on what I'm seeing. It's still hanging on there. Yeah. And then what was the other one? The Korean one? Is that one still popular? Because that one was that got a lot of hype when it came out too. But I think that's just any MMO. Since I've been back in the MMO space, Lost Ark, there it is. Yeah, since I've been back in the MMO space, it's been interesting seeing the ebbs and flows of MMO games, and that's the vibe I've been getting. Right, people are looking because right, an MMO, it's an investment, right? I think a lot of people are searching for like that one or two MMOs that they can invest a lot of their time in, but if they can't find it, I mean, you know, when the new hotness comes out, they're gonna like, all right, let me go check this out. Maybe this is my new home. Following the crowd a little bit. Maybe not what they were expecting, but jump ship and on to the next big release, right? It's on life support if you ask me. New World, dang. Amazon backed New World. Come on, Bezos. What's going on? Amazon has enough money to keep it going. Rest of Amazon games have crashed and burned. They're desperate to keep it going. I don't know. What's their track record for games though? When you think of game development, you never thought of Amazon until New World, right? Did they ever come up with anything prior?
Done time walking. Like, allow me to play through that stuff. Not World Quest, not Warfronts, not...
Until the vulture swoops and buys it from Amazon? Who's gonna buy it from Amazon? I realized that besides 11 and 14, all the other MMOs I played weren't that long. The longest I played that wasn't FF was Terra for like a year or two. I mean, this is the longest MMO stint I've had in a decade plus. When I played WoW, it was... I played for a solid like 3 years, 3 years or so, I'd say. It was a nice little run here. They released 2 games and unreleased 1 game after release. New World is the most successful. So I mean, look, they have the Amazon name, but the Amazon game development is clearly a different, you know, it's not Amazon Web Services or whatever, though. You could, you know, but you could say they have, you know, they have the backing of Amazon as it is. Put more money into it, see if it goes anywhere, right? But to Lily's point, I think people are looking for a home when it comes to MMOs, right? So until you find that, you know, you're going to be checking out other ones. You want to play PSO2 someday? I don't know what... Phantasy Star Online, is that what that is? I don't know too much about that. I fart around in ESO for a bit each year, but I don't play with other people, so I don't consider it MMO. Yeah. If you'd like to know what I mean with the vulture, check Josh's video, Why Do Gamigo Kill MMOs? Oh, okay. We can check that out one of these days.
Main campaign, whatever have you, like, let me play your action RPG for loot. And get that loot in a co-op environment.
That kind of already exists with Mythic Dungeons. That doesn't spread into the legacy of the past dungeon content. That's something
right, that's
that
playing
resets.
5 ad nauseum. That's burnout. Mythic Dungeons are burnout.
But it's everything else.
I've heard about that.
It's true, and I do really like the scaling of a Mythic Dungeon.
It's a way, and you want action RPG, like it's straight up like Diablo affixes.
It is. I like Mythics a lot.
I've heard a little bit about the Mythic system. Is Final Fantasy's variant an attempt to kind of break into that space too? But I've heard like positives and negatives, but it sounds like a lot revolves around the Mythic system, and there's like a lot of different difficulties.
I just want access to the bulk of them for my own enjoyment.
Let me do them all. Send me all the way back to vanilla.
I want them to focus on improving the game. Like, I want to see more things like this UI. If you're not working on this modular content, if you're making the game evergreen, like, keep improving everything we have.
Oh, thanks, Horn.
And
Appreciate that.
elevate that. And I do not care if your content suffers. We've learned from Final Fantasy now that people just take breaks. Don't over pursue my dollar in that way. And in that way, like, to me, if you buy a year sub to World of Warcraft, you're insane. Like, why would you lock in for that long? It's important to walk away. That's how you're going to avoid burnout. You don't need that sunk cost fallacy poking at you at the end of the day when you're getting home at 10 p.m. and you're thinking, what should I do with my few minutes of my evening? You don't need World of Warcraft there going tick, 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 tick at you.
Yeah, that's kind of what we talked about earlier on, right? Feeling like a chore to play instead of, playing for fun. I always play with Disaster because Disaster is fun to play with. That's a lie. Like you, Kev. That's the truth, though. Fun to play with me. Disaster, maybe. Variant isn't a mythic attempt, in my opinion. It's challenging four-person content, but similarities in there. And they're expanding on it, too. I'm excited. I like that we're getting good lore in the Variant dungeons right now. That's my favorite part.
Meta about it. I think there's a reason we are seeing a vast majority of MMO content creators bounce between. And I don't think you can call it a trend yet because we had the mass exodus to Final Fantasy XIV, and then there were, speaking broadly, I don't mean to downplay any of these games, except for maybe New World. But Guild Wars 2.
People like New World. We're here saying we like things and let us like them. Like, don't pick on New World.
It's me. This is my video. This is my opinion.
It's true.
I think New World is trash. But
heard it here,
Final
folks.
Fantasy was the big thing, and I don't think you can call it a trend because we haven't seen the other end of this pendulum. But I'm calling it now. This is how I think a lot of creators that you may know and enjoy are gonna go. I think they're gonna hit the wall of Final Fantasy XIV content. They're gonna jump off the pendulum, jump on the pendulum of World of Warcraft as it has new content. And when WoW reaches the end of that arc, when they're waiting for 0.1 Dragonflight patch, they're going to head back to Final Fantasy XIV where new content has been injected. I think that's how a vast majority of them are going to go. Replace whatever MMO with whatever other MMO your content creator of choice is playing. That's how I see this is going to go. I think it's going to be World of Warcraft, Final Fantasy, World of Warcraft, Final Fantasy for a lot of people out there. Maybe it'll be Guild Wars. Maybe it'll be SWTOR. Maybe that new Riot MMO that's coming out.
Star Wars.
Obviously, a lot of people are going to check that. Hey, don't forget ESO. A lot of people really like ESO.
Yes,
ESO, baby.
There's no shade there. I actually really like ESO as well, but I stay away from it because I lost a lot of time to it very quickly. And I was just like, yep. And none of my friends are playing it. So to me, MMOs are co-op experiences, so I'm also somewhat swayed by where my friends are. And that's my big answer to what would get me to play WoW.
You're all my friends, and you're here in 14,
my buddy
so
plays.
I'm here to stay.
It's a co-op game. It's more enjoyable with friends. Certainly Mythics are more enjoyable with friends. Do not do them by yourself. It's a miserable, toxic experience.
It's been interesting dipping my toe back into World of Warcraft after such a long break, but more specifically after playing Final Fantasy XIV, because going into 14 a year ago plus, when I was going into 14 last year, in my head, even though I was done with WoW at the time, where I was mentally was that I thought Final Fantasy XIV might become the game that I play when I'm waiting on new WoW content. But I got it backwards.
Oh,
WoW was going to be the game that I play when I'm waiting on new Final Fantasy content.
By the way, y'all, did you see my Discord post about Shadowbringers, my Spotify rewind? Soken was my #1 artist. I was in his top 3% of listeners, and Shadowbringers was my #1 song of the year. Baby, there it is. All right, y'all, we made it through, son. Okay, that's the Grinding Gear channel. Like I said, let's go check these guys out. Go support the channel and the Clips channel, because Nawel is working very hard over there too, putting in the good work. But yeah, I think it's interesting. And to see people quitting 14 and potential, or taking a break from it, we have these guys who they're committed, baby. We locked them up into a contract, 5-year max deal. They are on Team Final Fantasy 14 for a little bit. Working hard right now. I'm in Alliance raid instead of finishing tomorrow's videos. Well, I won't snitch on you to your bosses, so your secret is safe with me. All right. I don't know why I did that like I was ending stream.